I was in the middle of a countdown. At the exact second it hit 0, I chopped down my 17th shadow lizard. Right then, a notification popped up in the center of my vision. I didn't stop my blade. Even after a shadow lizard loses its head, its tail twitches for about 2 seconds. That was my final attack window. If I ignored it, that tail could whip out half the health bar of a squishy class. I stepped to the side, pressed my wrist down, and drove my knife through its eye socket into the brainstem. The lizard went limp. I knelt to harvest the materials. Shadow lizard backskin was a top-tier secondary material. One piece went for 4 silver and 50 copper on the exchange. My daily quota was 40. The light in the 3rd level of the shattered mine was dim. Low-grade glowstones embedded in the rock walls emitted a pale blue light, reaching only a few meters. Fine mineral dust floated in the air, smelling of metal and lizard blood. I had been down here for nearly 5 hours. Only then did I look at the announcement. It floated in the dead center of my field of vision, ignoring all UI layers. It looked like it had been shoved directly into the game's core data. White text sat on a pure black background. No icons. No borders. Global announcement. The realm of divinity will merge with the real world in 7 days. Countdown, 7 days, midnight. The timer in the corner ticked. The seconds started dropping. Every tick felt like a nail being driven into something I wasn't ready to define yet. I didn't panic. I had spent 3 years grinding in this game. I'd seen hundreds of events, version updates, and emergency maintenances. None of them looked like this. No branding, just black and white. It didn't fit any business logic. This announcement was either real, or it was a level of hacking I had never seen before. Either way, panicking was useless. I took a few seconds to check my status. Control panel, normal. Inventory, normal. Friend list, normal. Then, I opened my talent tree. At the bottom of a long list of passive skills I knew by heart, I found an entry I had never seen before. Hidden talent, attribute devour. Quality, unknown. Description, after killing a target, you may choose to devour one of its attributes. Traits, no cooldown. No limit on uses. Note, this talent is soul-bound. Non-transferable. Cannot be sealed. This panel is visible only to you. I read it twice. The first time to confirm the words. The second time to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. No cooldown. No limit. I could take attributes from anything I killed. I ran the implications through my head. If the announcement was true, and the game merged with reality in 7 days, the lizard corpse in front of me would no longer be a pile of data and textures. If this talent still worked then, it meant every enemy I killed would make me stronger. I closed the panel. That was too far off to worry about now. I switched to my friend list and found a grayed out icon. I sent a message. You alive? A few seconds passed. A reply came back. You got it too? The announcement or the talent? I asked. Both, he replied. How many triggers? His icon flickered. He was probably digging through data or deciding whether to tell me. I used the gap to pull the 18th shadow lizard into combat. Grinding and talking didn't conflict. That was basic professional survival. The realm of divinity has 74 million registered users, he finally replied. So far, 40 people have triggered a hidden talent, including you. 39 are still alive. One died 40 seconds before the announcement. He was insta-killed by a boss in a purgatory dungeon. His resurrection CD is 21 hours, but the panel shows the character is permanently dead. No one knows if resurrection will work after the merger. 40 triggers. 1 dead. 39 left, including me. I didn't ask about his talent. I finished off the 18th lizard, skinned it, and threw it in my bag. Then I scrolled to the bottom of my friend list to another name, Su Xiaoyu. The icon was gray. Offline. Last login, 14 hours ago. I stared at that gray icon for 2 seconds. I didn't leave a message. I didn't call. Her boarding school in the south of the city had strict rules. Students weren't allowed phones during evening study sessions. But Xiaoyu had a secret old phone I bought for her. She only turned it on after lights out. I paid for her data, just enough for a few messages a month. Right now, she was probably at her desk finishing a practice exam. I switched back to my chat with the other guy. I'm going to the south side of the city. To find your sister? The school phone won't go through. The man on the other end, Shenzhu, went silent. He never wasted words. When he was quiet, he was calculating distance, time, probability, and the optimal path. 10 seconds later, a message popped up. Not text, but a coordinate. South side. From my current position, it was 14.7 kilometers away. I didn't need to zoom in to know what it was. His reply was short. You owe me one. I didn't reply. I closed the interface and stood in the dim light of the mine. I checked my bag. 32 backskins. I was 8 short of my quota. I didn't keep grinding. I closed the inventory and disconnected my consciousness. The lid of the gaming pod slid open. The light and smells of the real world rushed in. I lay there for a few seconds to adjust. The ceiling light I'd used for 3 years was flickering, the bulb aging and yellow. It made the room look even shabbier. The custom PC in the corner was humming. The sound of the cooling fan was loud in the quiet room. A draft squeezed through a crack in the window, carrying the smell of grease from the fast food shop downstairs. This was my life for the last 3 years. A 20 square meter room, a gaming pod, a computer, a bed, a wardrobe. I sat up and swung my feet onto the floor. The tiles were cold. I pulled my phone charger from the wall, coiled it, and shoved it into my backpack. I pulled open a drawer and grabbed a roll of cash, about 3,000 yuan from the materials I'd sold this week. I tucked the money into an inner pocket. From the bottom of the drawer, I pulled out a folding knife. It wasn't very sharp, but it would work. It was the closest thing to a weapon I owned. I changed into a pair of sneakers with thick soles. I might have to take some shortcuts, and my cheap shoes wouldn't last. I stood at the door and looked back at the room. There was nothing else worth taking. 3 years of grinding was all stored in a game account. And in 7 days, that account would become reality. The whole thing felt absurd. I had spent 3 years living off data to support myself and my sister. Now that data was turning real, and I had no idea what that actually meant. I opened the door and walked down the stairs. The hallway was unnaturally quiet. Usually, the barbershop downstairs blared loud music. Today, there was nothing. The middle-aged man next door usually walked his dog around this time. Today, there was no barking. I walked down 3 flights of stairs, pushed open the heavy door, and stepped out into the evening street. The cars on the road were sparse, at least half as many as usual. A few were just sitting dead in the middle of the lanes. Their doors were wide open, but the drivers were gone. It wasn't an accident. There were no skid marks, no dents, and no hazard lights blinking. People had simply abandoned their vehicles and vanished. The lights in a nearby convenience store were still humming. A man in a gray t-shirt stood by the entrance, clutching his phone and screaming the same sentence over and over. His voice was completely shot. It's not April Fool's. Listen to me. It's not a joke. I walked right past him. I didn't stop. I didn't know who he was or who he was calling. I didn't care why he was breaking down. I only knew one thing. If someone fell apart within minutes of the announcement, they wouldn't survive the next 7 days. That wasn't me being cold. It was the basic survival algorithm I'd learned from 3 years of grinding. You can't make decisions for others. You have to keep yourself alive first. Only then can you protect the people you care about. The coordinates on my map glowed on the screen. 14.7 kilometers south of the city. I shoved the phone back into my pocket. I didn't need to look at it anymore. I stepped out of the apartment complex gates. My first instinct wasn't to walk. I stood by the curb and pulled out a ride-sharing app. The map showed a dozen cars within 2 kilometers. I placed 3 separate orders for a ride south, offering double the fare. Nobody took the call. I waited 30 seconds and refreshed. Half the icons on the map vanished. The drivers hadn't picked up passengers. They had just gone offline. I tried the shared bikes lining the sidewalk. I scanned the code. Server busy. I tried another. Server busy. The third one simply showed as offline. I put my phone away and looked at the abandoned cars in the street. I walked to the nearest one, a white sedan. The keys were still in the ignition. I hopped in and turned them. The engine roared to life, but the front bumper was wedged tight against a guardrail. It wouldn't budge. I checked a black SUV next. The window was halfway down, but the keys were gone. Then I found an electric scooter lying on its side. I picked it up. The battery was at 72%, which was plenty, but there was no key. It was useless. I stood there for a moment, processing the data. It had been less than an hour since the announcement. The city's transit system was already paralyzed. It wasn't a mechanical failure. It was the human element. The drivers had fled. The servers were overloaded. Public transport was likely dead. The city was still a machine, but the people who ran the gears had walked away. I stopped looking for a ride. I turned and started walking south along the inner-city highway. I hadn't even cleared a kilometer when the air changed. It wasn't a smell or a temperature shift. It was a change in density. It felt like an invisible patch of air in front of me had suddenly become thicker, heavier. I stopped. Instinctively, I took a half step back. Then, the rift opened. There was no sound, no flash of light. Space itself tore open like a piece of paper being ripped by invisible fingers. It started as a black line, thin as a strand of hair, then stretched wide. In less than a second, a 2-meter-tall tear stood before me. The edges glowed with a saturated purple hue, the exact same color as the portal effects I'd seen in my gaming pod 1,000 times. But this wasn't a game. This was reality. A claw poked out of the rift first. It was grayish-white, covered in fine, overlapping scales. 3 sharp talons curved inward at the tip. I knew that claw. A gray husk larva. 3 years ago, when I first started my account in Age of Divinity, this was the first monster I killed in the starter village. I still remembered its attack patterns: charge, claw, and a tail swipe. It was a cycle. In the game, these things were only 30 centimeters tall. The one crawling out of the rift now stood nearly 5 feet high. Including its scaled tail, it was over 2 meters long. It had no eyes, just a horizontal slit for a mouth that twitched incessantly. I'd seen that twitch before. It was the creature's standard animation for locking onto a target. I gripped my folding knife. I had no stat bonuses, no skills, no gear. Right now, I was just a 23-year-old guy. Level 1, 5'10", 150 pounds. My only exercise was walking downstairs to get delivery. My only weapon was a blade less than 4 inches long. The larva charged. It was fast, much faster than I was used to. In the real world, my reaction speed wasn't being boosted by an agility stat. I lunged to the side, but I wasn't fast enough. The creature's claws grazed my left shoulder. My jacket tore open. Blood seeped through the fabric. The pain was sharp and immediate. It wasn't haptic feedback or a simulated sting. It was the raw, burning sensation of skin being sliced open. I didn't let go of the knife. As the larva lost its balance from the momentum of the charge, I drove the blade into its neck. There was a natural gap in its scales there. Years ago, I had practiced that exact move over and over to farm these things quickly. The blade sank in about 2 inches. The larva let out a hiss. It wasn't a cry of pain, it was a combat reflex. It began to spin, its tail whipping toward me. I didn't dodge this time. I took the hit. The tail slammed into my right ribs. I felt a dull thud deep in my chest. Something probably cracked. But I used the momentum to pull the knife out and stab the same spot again. This time, I went deeper. The creature's movements turned jerky. The neck was its neural hub. If you did enough damage there, its motor functions would fail. Its third claw swipe went wide. I circled to its side and shoved the knife upward through the gap in its lower jaw. It collapsed. Its body gave 2 final twitches as fluorescent fluid leaked from its scales. Then, it went still. I crouched beside the carcass, gasping for air. My shoulder was bleeding. My ribs throbbed. My hand was shaking, not from fear, but from the adrenaline dump. It took me 10 seconds to steady my breathing. Then, a prompt popped up in my field of vision. It wasn't on a screen. It was floating in the air, semi-transparent. The white font matched the talent panel I'd seen earlier today. Devourable target, gray husk larva, level 2. Extractable attributes: Constitution +3, Strength +2, Agility +1. Trait: low-grade scales, passive. Physical defense +2. It was exactly what the talent description had promised. This talent worked in reality. I stared at the floating lines of text for 2 seconds. Then, I chose Constitution +3. The feeling hit me instantly. It wasn't painful, and it wasn't a sudden explosion of energy. It felt like a glass of water at the perfect temperature flowing down my throat and into my stomach. From there, it radiated outward, a gentle warmth spreading evenly into my limbs. The gash on my left shoulder didn't heal. Constitution didn't mean instant regeneration. But I felt my body grow heavier, not in weight, but in presence. It was as if I had become physically more solid. I looked down at my palm. I clenched my fist, released it, and clenched it again. I didn't look any different than I had 5 minutes ago, but I knew. My frame could handle more force now. If that larva's tail whipped me again, it wouldn't hurt nearly as much. A thin experience bar flashed at the bottom of my vision. Killing monsters gave XP. If I gathered enough, I'd level up. It was the most basic mechanic of the game, and yet here it was, functioning in the real world. The progress was tiny, though. Killing a level 2 gray husk larva only filled a few % of the bar. I looked up at the night sky. 7 points of light had appeared against the deep blue canopy, arranged in a perfect arc. They didn't flicker. They didn't move. It looked like someone had installed orbital floodlights high above the Earth. I was certain they hadn't been there when I left the house this afternoon. Back then, the twilight sky had been clear. 7 lights. I watched them for a few seconds, but no answers came. I knelt back down, used my knife to pry a scale off the larva's carcass, and shoved it into my pocket. I didn't know if it was useful, but taking something was better than nothing. I stood up to keep moving when a voice drifted from behind me. Was that angle calculated, or was it a fluke? I spun around fast. My folding knife snapped open, held tight in my grip. I hadn't fully adjusted to the fact that enemies could now include people. A young woman stood under a streetlight about 10 meters away. She wore a dark gray windbreaker and a heavy-looking backpack. Her hair was pulled back tight. She didn't have a weapon in her hands, but her stance told me she didn't feel like she needed one. I didn't lower the knife. "Who are you?" "I've been tracking your coordinates since you logged off from the shattered mine," she said. She didn't say following. She said tracking. "Your last known position, the location of your sister's school, and the city's road topology." I cross-referenced the data. I have a background in data science. It wasn't a difficult calculation. I kept my guard up, but I didn't advance. "You're Shenzhu." She nodded. I stayed silent for a few seconds, my knife still ready. I flicked my eyes to the edge of my vision to pull up my status panel. The text floated there, clean and simple like a system log. Name, Su Ming, level 1, Constitution, 25, +3, Strength, 18, Agility, 14, Spirit, 11, Total Attributes, 68, Experience, 3%. In less than an hour, my body was already sturdier than when I left the house. But the XP from that kill was pathetic. A level 2 larva only gave 3 points. At this rate, I need to kill 30 more just to hit level 2. This was only the beginning. 7 days. No cooldown. No limit. I ran the numbers in my head and closed the panel. "You're one of the 40, aren't you?" I asked. "How else do you think I found you?" Shenzhu replied. 40 hidden awakened. You're the devourer type. I'm the analyst type. Weaker than you, but useful." I lowered the knife tip slightly, though I didn't fold it away. We stood 5 meters apart under the street lamp, the monster's corpse between us. "What's your talent?" I asked. "Analysis," she said. "I can see the stats, skills, and talent levels of other players. Unless they go out of their way to hide it, I see everything. For normal awakened, I can see right through them. For hidden ones, I can only see the surface." She paused. "With you, I can only see your name and level. Your talent column is blank. Blank. Not hidden. Blank. There's a space for a talent, but the content is invisible to me. Either your talent quality is higher than my reading limit, or it doesn't exist in the Divine Realms base database." I didn't respond. I finally folded the knife and tucked it away. "You followed me just to tell me that." "I followed you because back in the game, I scanned the panels of the other hidden awakened. Out of the 40 people who triggered hidden talents, I tracked 39 coordinates. I could read basic info on 38 of them. One is dead, his panel is locked. And then there's you. I can see your location and level, but the talent is a void." She stepped forward. "A variable I can't read. With a 7-day countdown hanging over us, you're either the biggest risk or the biggest opportunity." I glanced at her, but didn't take the bait. "Let's go." "Where?" "South side. My sister is at school." Shenzhu didn't ask how old she was, or if she was safe alone. She just adjusted her backpack straps and fell into step behind me. Over the next 40 minutes, we hit 3 more spatial rifts. The first was under a highway bridge. The rift opened on the side of a concrete pillar, and 2 larvae crawled out. I didn't let Shenzhu help. I handled the first one with my knife, taking 2 minutes and earning a shallow scratch on my arm. I finished the second one faster. I was starting to get used to the rhythm of real-world combat. I devoured both. I chose strength +2 and agility +1. My total attributes jumped from 68 to 71. The second rift appeared at a street corner, tearing through the trunk of a plane tree. A mutated larva crawled out, larger than the others with darker scales. Shenzhu shouted out its data from 10 meters away. It took me longer to kill this one. Its claws sliced my upper right arm, and blood dripped down my elbow. But I found a window in its slow turn radius and ended it in 3 stabs. I chose strength +4. My strength stat hit 24. I could feel the difference now. It wasn't bulky muscle growth. It was the raw power behind my movements. My grip was steadier. Every strike took less effort. The third rift opened near a gas station. It was just one standard larva. I put it down in 90 seconds. Standing under the bright lights of the gas station, I checked my panel one last time. My total attributes had climbed from 65 when I left home to 78 now. A 13-point increase. It was exactly the pace I needed. The efficiency was incredible. It was even higher than his gold farming days in the game. But I didn't just need to be better than the average person. I needed to be strong enough to protect myself and my sister within 7 days. Your panel, Shenzhu's voice drifted over from the side. Can I see it again? We were standing under the harsh, buzzing lights of the gas station. I didn't close the interface. I let it hover there. Shenzhu stared at the empty air in front of me for a few seconds. He could still only see my name and level, but there was a new line of information visible to him now. Your talent quality, it changed, he whispered. It went from unreadable to 3 question marks. What does that mean? I asked. He frowned, reciting the hierarchy from memory. In the Divine Realm era, the rankings are common, excellent, rare, epic, legendary, and mythical. Question marks aren't part of that sequence. It either means it's higher than mythical, or it belongs to a completely different classification system. I stayed silent for a moment, processing that. Then I asked, what about the other hidden awakened? What are their talent qualities? The 38 I scanned were all mythical, Shenzhu said. All 40 triggers, including you and the one who died, are mythical grade. But yours shows 3 question marks. It's outside the system. And the normal ones? A huge range. Everything from common to legendary. But Hidden Awakened don't share the same starting line as regular ones. I didn't push for more details. I used the tap water at the gas station to wash the wound on my right arm and gave it a basic wrap. We hit the road again. We walked for another 2 kilometers. We didn't run into any more rifts, but the road conditions were deteriorating. Several sections were completely choked with abandoned cars. We had to climb over guardrails and push through the overgrown greenery on the shoulder to get around them. As we passed a convenience store, I glanced up at the sky. Those 7 points of light were still there. But the count had changed. It wasn't 7 anymore. It was 9. 2 new points of light had appeared on the outer edge of the arc. They were slightly dimmer, looking like they had just been installed. You see it too, Shenzhu said from behind me. I see it. Do you know what they are? No. I pulled my gaze away and kept moving. I tried to connect the dots. The announcements, the talents, the rifts, the monsters, and now the orbital lights. The frequency and density of these things are accelerating. I didn't know what 9 lights meant, but I knew one thing for sure. It wouldn't stop at 9. The night grew deeper. Most of the windows in the residential buildings lining the highway were dark. Occasionally, a single light would be burning, a lonely buoy on a black sea. I started doing the math in my head. I was at 78 total attributes. If I only reached 78 on the first day, a linear growth would put me at around 300 by the 7th day. That wasn't enough. But this wasn't linear growth. My talent had no cooldown and no limit. And the rifts were appearing faster and faster. The word I was looking for was exponential. I stopped calculating because the potential numbers were becoming too large to believe. 20 minutes later, we passed a cluster of windmills and a derelict bus station. I stopped dead. 30 meters ahead, a rift had torn open right in the middle of the road. It was larger than any I'd seen yet. The purple edges rippled like a wound in the air. Things were crawling out. Not just one, several. The first larva was already out. The second was halfway through. A third was still deep in the rift, its red compound eyes flickering in the purple glow. 3 at once. I flicked my folding knife open. I didn't look back, but I spoke clearly. 3 of them. I'll take the slow one on the left first. If the middle one reaches your position, use your talent to suppress it. I can't hold it for long, Shenzhu warned. Long enough is all I need. I charged. The first larva locked onto me and lunged. I didn't hesitate. We collided, but at the last millisecond, I slid to the side. Using its own momentum against it, I drove my blade into the gap in its neck armor. 1 down. I didn't stop to check the devour options. I pivoted toward the second one. It was fully out now, larger and darker than the first. It didn't charge. It stood its ground, its tail lashing the pavement. It was charging up an attack. I didn't give it the chance. I pressed the advantage, getting under its guard before the tail could strike. I stabbed 3 times in rapid succession, twice in the neck, once in the jaw. By the time the third one finished crawling out, the second was already collapsing. I finished the third in less than a minute. I knelt among the 3 carcasses, breathing hard, as the devour panels popped up one by one. First one, strength +2. Second one, constitution +3. Third one, agility +2. I took them all. 7 attribute points in one go. I stood up and flicked the monster fluids off my blade. My total attributes had jumped from 65 at the start of the night to 85. I had devoured 8 times total, but my experience bar was only at 27 points. I was still far from level 2. A single larva only gave 3 measly experience points. At this rate, I need to kill 20 more just to level up. But a single devour gave me more stats than a level up ever could. My growth wasn't tied to my level. Then, a new prompt appeared at the bottom of the panel. It wasn't a devour notice. The font was bolder, glowing with a faint golden aura. Devour count reached. Talent evolution conditions met. Begin evolution? I stared at the gold text for 2 seconds. Evolve. I selected yes. There was no flash of light. No shaking ground. No cinematic display. But I felt a shift. The description of my talent on the panel began to rewrite itself. The original single sentence grew. Hidden talent. Attribute devour. Quality. Status. Evolved. Phase 1. Description. After killing a target, you may devour 2 attributes or traits simultaneously. No cooldown. No limit. 2 items. I wasn't limited to choosing just one anymore. I could take strength and constitution together, or an attribute and a skill. My efficiency had just doubled. I closed the panel. 9 orbital lights watched us from above. In less than 2.5 hours, I had gained 20 points. I realized then that my growth was going to be much faster than even my wildest estimates. I only had to do 3 things. Keep walking. Keep killing. Keep devouring. I stopped in front of a row of abandoned shops, a 2-story hardware store. The rolling shutter door was halfway open, and the second-floor windows were intact. I checked the perimeter. The shutter could be locked from the inside, and the back door was sealed tight. We stay here tonight, I said. Shenzhu didn't argue. We ducked under the shutter, pulled it shut, and slid the bolt home. We were safe, for now. The hardware store was a mess. Shelves were knocked over, tools lay scattered across the floor, and tangled wires and empty boxes covered the ground. I didn't care about the clutter. I grabbed a few of the fallen metal shelves and dragged them behind the rolling shutter. They wouldn't stop a determined monster, but they'd act as a loud alarm if anything tried to force its way in. We headed to the second floor. It was a small office area with a desk, a few chairs, a metal cabinet, and a single sofa. The windows were intact. I pulled the curtains halfway shut, leaving just enough space to peek out. From this height, I had a clear view of the street. If something, or someone, approached from the front, I'd see them long before they saw us. Shenzhu sat on the sofa and dropped his backpack at his feet. He didn't speak. He didn't lie down, either. He just sat there, waiting for me to make the call. I stood by the window, peering through the gap in the curtains. The streetlights were dead. The entire road was bathed in nothing but pale, cold moonlight. I stood there for a full minute, checking for any unusual energy fluctuations or movement. Nothing. We'll take turns, I said, leaning my back against the wall. You sleep first. I'll wake you in 2 hours. Shenzhu didn't argue. He took off his jacket, folded it into a makeshift pillow, and lay down on the sofa. Within seconds, his breathing became steady. He wasn't truly asleep. He was just resting his body as efficiently as possible. He was a professional. He knew that in a world like this, you recover whenever you can. I sat on the floor by the window, my folding knife resting on my knees. The night was quiet. Too quiet. This city used to hold millions of people, but now, there was no sound of cars, no hum of televisions, and no human voices. Occasionally, a dull thud echoed from the distance, maybe a building collapsing, or maybe something worse. I pulled up my status panel. Level 1, Constitution, 31, Strength, 26, Agility, 17, Spirit, 11, Total Attributes, 85, Experience, 27/100. Since leaving my apartment, I had gained 20 attribute points entirely through devouring. My experience bar was barely a quarter full, but I didn't dwell on it. I closed the panel and went back to watching the street. 2 hours later, the sky shifted from pitch black to a deep, bruised gray. I woke Shenzhu and took my turn to lie down. I never truly fell into a deep sleep. I drifted in that half-conscious state where I could still hear the distant sounds of the city, but nothing came close to our hideout. When dawn broke, I woke up. It wasn't an alarm or a noise. My body just knew it was time to move. I stood up and stretched my stiff shoulders. The wound on my right arm had scabbed over during the night. No infection. That was the best result I could have hoped for. Shenzhu was already up, sitting at the desk and reorganizing his pack. "Let's team up," he said suddenly. I looked at him. "Your talent devours attributes," he continued. "Mine analyzes weaknesses. Right now, we're fighting separately. If we team up, I can provide crowd control and tactical intel while you clear the threats. We share the experience. It's the most efficient way." I didn't hesitate. I pulled up the team panel. It worked just like a game interface. I sent the invite, and he accepted. Asterisk team established. Leader, Lin Yuan, LV.1. Member, Shenzhu, LV.1. Experience distribution, equal, asterisk. I was about to close the screen when Shenzhu spoke again. "Wait." His voice was different, somewhere between shock and confusion. He was staring at his own panel, then looking at me, or rather, reading my data. "Open your team panel again." I did. "Your experience requirement for level 2. He paused. "It's 100 points. "Yeah," I said. "What about it?" Shenzhu opened and closed his panel repeatedly, as if he couldn't believe his eyes. "My requirement for level 2 is only 10 points. The room went silent. My requirement was 10 times higher than his. For every one monster he needed to kill to level up, I needed to kill 10. "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means your talent is too powerful," Shenzhu said. "The system is using your level speed to balance you. Other people level up fast and gain maybe a dozen attribute points per level. You level up slowly, but you don't need levels for stats. You just devour them." He looked at the data again. 10 times. That number isn't random. It's roughly the difference between your devour rate and a normal player's growth. It's a balancing mechanism. I didn't say anything. I did the math in my head. I had killed 8 monsters and gained 20 attribute points. If I were a normal awakened, those 8 kills would have put me at level 2 or 3, giving me maybe 15 points total. My talent allowed me to walk 2 paths at once. I got the attributes from the kills and the experience toward the next level. I gripped my knife and stood up. "Let's go." We left the shop and continued south along the highway. The sun was up, but the sky was a sickly leaden gray, not from clouds, but from the reality merging process. 6 days left. We hadn't been walking for 30 minutes when a rift appeared in the air ahead. It was about a meter tall, its purple edges glowing faintly in the daylight. A creature crawled out. It looked like a gray shell larva, but larger, with a darker carapace and 3 pairs of compound eyes instead of 2. Gray shell tracker. Level 5. I recognized it from the game. It was a scout unit. Faster than a larva, stronger, but its shell wasn't much thicker. It was a mid-tier grunt. I didn't wait for it to find its footing. I charged. With my double devour unlocked, I didn't need caution. I needed efficiency. The tracker lunged, much faster than the larvae from yesterday. Its claw slashed my left forearm, drawing blood, but I didn't flinch. With my 31 constitution, it was a scratch. In the same motion, I drove my folding knife into the gap in its neck armor. One hit. One kill. Target devoured. Gray shell tracker, LV, 5. Available attributes: Strength +4, Agility +3, Constitution +2, Spirit +1. I chose Strength and Agility. My Strength jumped to 30, and my Agility hit 20. My total attributes rose to 89. I also gained 5 experience points. Since we were teamed up, the level 5 kill gave us a decent chunk. My bar moved to 32/100. Shenzhu's bar, however, shot from 0 to 50%. Keep moving, I said. Over the next 3 hours, we hit 6 more rifts. They were small, usually spawning 1 or 2 trackers at a time. Every kill made me stronger, and every step took us deeper into the changing world. The road ahead was quiet, but it didn't stay that way for long. Every few miles, a gray shell tracker would lung out of a rift to challenge us. Sometimes, a level 6 variant with scythe-like forelimbs joined the fray. I told Shenzhu to stay back. I needed these fights. I needed to master the rhythm of my double devour talent. The first tracker fell quickly. I took 4 strength and 3 agility. The second gave me 3 strength and 3 constitution. Then came the slicer, a level 6 variant. It was fast, but I was faster. I claimed 5 agility and 4 strength from its corpse. I kept moving, kept killing, and kept devouring. By the time I took down the 6th tracker, I had completed 12 devours across 6 battles. I stopped in the shadows beneath a highway overpass to catch my breath. I pulled up my status panel. Name: Lin Yuan. Level: 1. Constitution: 44 plus 13. Strength: 44 plus 18. Agility: 35 plus 18. Spirit: 12 plus 1. Total attributes: 135. Experience: 62 out of 100. My total stats had jumped from 85 to 135 in less than 15 hours. I had more than doubled my power since leaving the shop. The efficiency of the double devour was even better than I'd hoped. It wasn't just giving me a second life, it was doubling the value of every single kill. Shenzhu had benefited too. After splitting the experience from those 6 trackers, he had leveled up from 1 to 2. I watched him move. His steps were steadier now, and his mental suppression field activated noticeably faster. I'm level 2, he said, checking his own stats. My base attributes went up by 16 points. That put him somewhere around 30 or 40 total points. He was still far behind me, but he was no longer a regular human. He looked at me, curious. How many times can your talent evolve? I don't know, I replied. The first evolution triggered after 7 devours. The system doesn't say what's next. If the next stage allows for area of effect devouring, Shenzhu mused, your efficiency will hit a whole new magnitude. I didn't answer. I stared at my numbers for a moment longer before closing the panel. We stood up and kept walking. The noon sun struggled to pierce through the lead gray sky, casting blurry shadows on the asphalt. In the corner of my vision, the countdown timer ticked away. 5.5 days left. At this rate, I couldn't even imagine how high my stats would be by the 7th day. By late afternoon, the rifts stopped appearing. The sudden silence wasn't a good sign. Based on my experience from the first day, a drop in frequency usually meant the next wave would be massive. We reached a section of the highway completely choked with abandoned cars. Suddenly, the air ahead began to warp. This rift was different. It was wider, nearly 3 meters across, and the purple edges pulsed like a beating heart. A creature stepped out. It was much larger than a tracker, standing 2 meters tall and covered in thick, dark gray plating. 2 pairs of dark red eyes swiveled in its head. Instead of claws, its forelimbs ended in massive, bone-white scythes. A gray shell scytheguard. Level 7. This was the strongest monster possible at this stage of the game. Its armor was twice as thick as a tracker's, and its reach was deadly. I didn't rush in. I visualized its attack patterns from the game. It was slower than a tracker, but that 1.5-meter attack radius meant it could cut me down before I even got close. Armor is 80% thicker than the scout units. Shenzhu called out from 10 meters away, his eyes glowing with his analysis talent. The gaps in the neck are reinforced. You can't pierce it from the front. The back of the neck is exposed, but you'll have to get behind it. I moved. I didn't charge head on. I circled to the side, baiting it into a turn. As it pivoted, I lunged for its rear. But the scytheguard didn't complete the turn. It stopped halfway and swung its bone blade backward in a horizontal sweep. I cursed. This wasn't the standard AI from the game. This thing was making real-time tactical decisions. I threw myself back, but the tip of the blade caught my ribs. It tore through my jacket and left a thin red line on my skin. It wasn't deep, but it was a wake-up call. These things were smarter than I remembered. The neck plates are separate growths, Shenzhu shouted. The joints between the plates are softer than the shell itself. I shifted my strategy. I stopped aiming for the kill shot and went for the legs. The leg joints are the universal weak point for all gray shell types. I hacked at its left knee 3 times in rapid succession. On the third hit, the blade bit through. The scytheguard lost its balance and buckled. As it tilted, the armor plates on its nape flared open. I lunged forward and drove my knife deep into the exposed flesh. The beast collapsed. Target devoured. Gray shell scytheguard, LV, 7. Available attributes: Strength +7, Constitution +5, Agility +6, Spirit +3. Feature gained: Boneblade Strike, Active Skill, Melee AoE. I chose Strength and Constitution. My Strength hit 51 and my Constitution rose to 49. My total attributes were now 151. The experience was massive, too. I gained 12 points, bringing me to 74 out of 100. Shenzhu gained the same, putting him just 3 points away from level 3. I knelt by the carcass and used my knife to pry off a shard of the creature's bone blade. It was incredibly sharp, far better than my folding knife. I wrapped one end in cloth to create a makeshift handle. It was twice as long as my old blade and 3 times as sharp. If we can harvest weapons from them, I said, testing the weight, then we don't have to rely solely on system drops. Shenzhu looked at me. You're already thinking that far ahead? I didn't answer. I just gripped the new bone dagger and kept walking. The weight of the weapon was heavy, but it was a reassuring kind of weight. Around 2 in the afternoon, the air began to feel thick. It wasn't the temperature, it was a sensation of pressure, as if reality itself was being squeezed. I stopped and held the bone blade ready. I felt it. Shenzhu felt it too. Something big was coming. 50 meters ahead, the first rift exploded. It didn't tear open slowly like the others. It shattered like a pane of glass. Purple shards flew through the air, leaving jagged trails in the sunlight. Then came a second, and a third. 3 massive rifts, each over 2 meters wide, tore into the road less than 10 meters apart. They're here, Shenzhu said. His voice was flat, as if he were simply confirming a weather report. 3 gray shell trackers, all level 5, surged from the first rift. 2 gray shell slicers followed from the second, their level 6 scythe-like forelimbs gleaming with a cold, metallic light. But the third rift held the real nightmare. A gray shell warlord stepped out. It was level 8. It stood nearly 2.5 meters tall, its armor a scorched, charcoal gray. Instead of claws or blades, its forearms were lined with 2 rows of thick bone spikes. Each spike was 20 centimeters long, sharp and dense, like a row of spearheads fused to its flesh. I remembered this thing from the game. Back then, it took a 5-man team 20 minutes to kill one, and we still lost our tank. I knew its deadliest move, bone blade volley. It could launch those spikes like a shotgun blast. In reality, the pressure it radiated was 10 times worse than the screen ever conveyed. The 3 trackers charged first. I didn't wait. I lunged forward, swinging my new bone dagger in a wide arc. The sharp edge tore through the first tracker's neck armor like paper. One deep cut, a follow-up thrust, and it hit the asphalt, dead. I didn't stop to check the devour options. I pivoted to the right as the second tracker leaped. I slammed my left elbow into its face. With 57 points in Constitution, the impact sent the beast spinning through the air. I stepped in and drove my blade into the gap in its neck. The third tracker and the 2 slicers closed in simultaneously. The slicers had a massive reach, their sides sweeping across a 2-meter radius. I retreated a single step, letting the blades hiss past my chest, then dove low. Slicers were built for high swings, leaving their underbellies exposed. I thrust the bone dagger upward through the first slicer's jaw. The tip punched through the top of its skull. The second slicer was on me before I could pull the blade free. I blocked the incoming scythe with the back of my dagger. The force of the blow turned my entire right arm numb. I used the momentum to slide back and regain my footing. 2 more kill notifications flashed. I quickly dumped the points into strength and constitution and locked my eyes on the big one. The warlord hadn't moved. It stood there, watching me. The spikes on its arms vibrated, adjusting their angles like a weapon system locking on. Its energy structure is different, Shenzhu called out from the side. Extra nodes in the chest and arms. Those aren't just shells. It's got skills queued up. I didn't look back. Elite monsters with skills were common bosses in the game, but this was my first time facing one in the flesh. The warlord moved. It was faster than I expected, much faster than the trackers despite its size. I dodged right and tried to hamstring it, a standard move for its species. But when my blade hit its leg, it didn't sink in. The armor was twice as thick as a normal monster's. My blade caught and stuck after barely a centimeter. I pulled back, but the warlord didn't give me space. It swung its right arm. As it moved, the bone spikes flared outward, expanding like a fan to catch my torso. I couldn't dodge in time. I braced the bone dagger against my chest. The impact of the spikes hitting the blade sent me flying 2 meters back. I rolled and scrambled to my feet. The spikes aren't fixed, Shenzhu warned. It can control the angle. I stood up, shaking blood off my left arm. A level 8 elite shouldn't be this strong this early. It seemed the monsters in this reality were a grade higher than their game counterparts, smarter, faster, and far more lethal. The warlord charged again. This time, it thrust its arm forward like a spear. I slipped the strike and landed a counter blow on its forearm. Still nothing. Just a shallow scratch. The shell density is off the charts, Shenzhu yelled, his data syncing with my mind. There's an energy field over the armor. Aim for the nodes on the chest and arms. Break the skill nodes first. I shifted tactics. No more leg hits. I launched a flurry of strikes at its chest. The first 2 hits bounced off. The third hit the junction where 3 armor plates met. A tiny crack appeared. The warlord's reaction was violent. It hissed and crossed its arms over its chest. That was the signal. That was the weak spot. I pressed the advantage, refusing to let it breathe. I struck the same spot again and again. The crack widened. On the 4th hit, a palm-sized piece of armor shattered, exposing the pale, soft tissue underneath. In that moment, the warlord stopped defending. It hugged its own chest, and I realized too late what was happening. Every single spike on its arms detached at once. 20 bone shards launched in a massive, circular burst. Boneblade volley. I had half a second to judge the trajectory. It wasn't a line. It was a wide, lethal fan of shrapnel. I couldn't jump back. I had to go in. I didn't jump back. I threw myself forward, hitting the pavement and flattening my body against the asphalt. 3 bone shards whistled through the air, passing less than 10 centimeters above my spine. They slammed into the ground behind me, burying themselves half a meter deep into the solid road. I stayed there for a heartbeat, then scrambled up and glanced back at the vibrating shards. If I hadn't dropped, I'd have 3 new holes in my chest. On the warlord's arms, new spikes were already budding, growing fast enough for me to see. It would have a fresh batch ready in 10 seconds. The chest, Shenzhu called out. That spot is exposed. Go now. I didn't waste a second. I cut in from the side, ignoring the warlord's massive arms. I circled around its guard and lunged. I drove my bone blade dagger straight into the crack in its chest armor. The blade slid through the pale, soft tissue without any resistance. Without that shell, the creature was fragile. I buried the knife deep into its thoracic cavity. The warlord let out a low, wet growl. I ripped the blade out and stabbed it again. Then a third time. The massive creature shuddered and collapsed, hitting the ground with a heavy thud. The Devour panel flickered into view immediately. Now that I had unlocked dual attribute devouring, I could take 2 things from a single target. These elite monsters were getting dangerous. One set of skills could already cripple me. If I kept stacking raw stats, would I be able to survive the area of effect attacks coming my way? I made my choice. I selected Feature Devour, Boneblade Volley. Then I selected Attribute Devour, plus 10 Constitution. The process finished instantly. Boneblade Volley was now an active skill. It allowed me to grow and fire 12 bone shards in a fan-shaped burst with a 15-second cooldown. I felt a sudden bulge under the skin of my right arm. It felt like needles sliding rapidly beneath my flesh. There was no pain, just a strange, alien sensation that lasted half a second before vanishing. I looked at my arm. The skin was perfect. No scars, no protruding bone. But the skill icon was there, burned into my consciousness. I hadn't learned this or found it as loot. I had ripped it off my enemy. My stats refreshed. Constitution jumped from 49 to 59. Strength was 44, agility 35, and spirit 12. My total attributes hit 150. Shenzhu walked over, his eyes scanning me. You picked a skill? Yeah, I said, not bothering to hide it. Bone blade volley. Plus more constitution. Your first time picking a feature over a stat, Shenzhu noted. I thought you'd keep stacking numbers. I hadn't found anything worth the trade until now, I replied. This one is worth it. Shenzhu didn't push further, but his expression shifted. It was a look of confirmation, like I'd just proven something he'd been wondering about. By picking a skill and an attribute, I was showing him I knew when to pivot my strategy. I checked my wounds. The 3 scratches on my forearm had already stopped bleeding. With nearly 60 constitution, my natural healing was incredible. These surface wounds would be gone in hours. I checked my experience bar, 96%. One more, I said. Shenzhu pointed toward a bend in the road. A lone grayshell tracker, level 5, was crawling out of a small rift. I didn't run. I just walked toward it. The tracker hissed and lunged at me. I didn't draw my knife. I raised my right arm and focused on the new icon in my mind. A wave of warmth surged from deep within my arm, not from the muscle or bone, but from the talent itself. The skin on my forearm rippled. 8 bone shards erupted from my skin simultaneously. I wasn't practiced enough to fire all 12 yet, and my aim was shaky. The shards fanned out like short spears. 4 of them hit home. 2 glanced off the shell, and 2 missed entirely, pinning themselves into the ground. The tracker was slammed backward. 2 shards pierced its chest, 1 hit its shoulder, and another grazed its belly. It thrashed twice on the ground and went still. The panel popped up. I took agility and strength. Agility hit 39, strength hit 47. Then, a new notification flashed gold. Level 2. I watched as my base stats surged. My constitution grew by 3, strength by 3, agility by 2, and spirit by 2. On top of that, I gained 5 free attribute points. I stared at the numbers for a moment, then looked at Shenzhu. When you hit level 2, how many free points did you get? I asked. 5, he said without hesitation. And your natural stat growth? 1 point for every attribute, he replied. I looked back at my panel. My natural growth was more than double his. My constitution had jumped by 3, my strength by 3, and my agility and spirit by 2 each. The system was making it harder for me to level up, but it was rewarding me with terrifying power every time I did.